Oh boy, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. This has taken about 12, 16 hours to finally get to. It's been ridiculous. Story time, quick. I watched today's movie review yesterday and wanted to film my review of it yesterday, and post it preferably yesterday. But my computer was just ridiculously on the fritz, and I tried so much to get it going, to get my camera working attached to it. Wouldn't have any of it. This morning, still wouldn't have any of it until finally all the updates I needed done happened, and I'm here. So it took a long time to get here. I was wondering if there was some kind of powers that be that just didn't want me to review this. But it's time for another review. How's everyone doing? Your boy Apollo from Down, Down, Up, Up, back with the lovely hat on, of course, and it's time for something I'm looking forward to going into, as I would any version of the classic Christmas Carol. If you remember last year, we went through the 1951 classic starring Alastair Sim, a movie that keeps growing on me every single time I watch it. But today is from a bit of a different time, not too far off. This is the 1938 version of A Christmas Carol, starring, I believe, Reginald Owen as Scrooge and, God, I always forget his name, Gene Lockhart as Bob Cratchit. And the funny thing about this one, I saw this version of it before the 1951 version, and don't ask me why. I guess I wasn't a big date person at the time, with what movie came out when. I thought this was after 1951. And thinking about it now, I should have known better. No, it's not. This was before then. And it does hold up nicely. But when it comes to differences, it's always fun to dive into them and explain which one tells the story better. After watching the 1951 classic more, I can safely say that one holds up much better than this in telling the story. Does that lessen this movie for me? Not really. This is one I've watched more often, and I still enjoy watching every year. I am a big fan of the Christmas Carol story, but not skipping over. I shouldn't say not skipping. Yes, skipping over a lot of the new adaptations. But the 1951 will always be in my heart. But this version, the 1938 version, does still hold up nicely for me. First off, let's get into it. Some differences and see where we feel about it at the end. And maybe if you would feel like to watch it, at least you can say I can recommend it that much. It's a lot shorter than you might expect for the telling of A Christmas Carol in the big theaters, in big movie production. It's only 70 minutes, an hour 10. That's all it is. But it doesn't waste as much time as you'd think. The main focus this movie has, though, in my opinion, is more the Cratchit family than Scrooge, even though it's the same story as it would be. But I feel like we see a lot more of the Cratchits in this, and that may be due to the fact that Gene Lockhart plays Bob Cratchit, and I know he was a big enough deal at the time. He also played the judge in A Miracle on 34th Street, and although his character wasn't in the whole movie, it was part of a crucial scene, deciding whether or not Kris Kringle, aka Santa Claus, is allowed out and about. So he plays Bob Cratchit to a T really nicely here. I love the interactions with him and his family. And the funny thing is, I see in the credits that the woman who portrays Bob Cratchit's wife also, the actress has a last name Lockhart. So that makes me think, is that Gene's real wife or is that just pure coincidence? Either way, it's great because they do match up on screen together. But let's get more into the story. We start off, interestingly enough, with Ebenezer Scrooge's nephew walking the streets. He runs into the Cratchit kids, slides about with them, delivers a message to Bob at the office, and then Scrooge comes in, sets the mood. And the thing about Owen playing Scrooge compared to Sim, he's a lot less of sarcastic, but a lot more of I just don't give a damn. He also is not so much scared. He is slightly intimidated in this when he comes to meeting the spirits, but he does not show much fear in this. I do believe that fear has a lot to do with the Scrooge character meeting the spirits and seeing where things are going. And Sim is terrified, and I can't overstretch that enough in the 51 classic. Sim is terrified, and it does a great job putting it up. Owen, not so much, but he is just as interested in what's going on. And as you can tell, the hat has just given up, so we're just going to do the rest of it without the hat. So let's get into things. Unlike the 51 classic, it does actually take a bit of time to get to getting back to Scrooge's place. I think the 51 classic, it was only about 10 to 11 minutes where we get to the house. In this movie, it's about 20 minutes till we finally get back to Scrooge's place and things start happening. I find that interesting that this movie actually takes longer to get to the good stuff, yet it's a shorter runtime. That's kind of interesting. But like I said, we do focus a lot on Cratchit. Even so, there are some new side things going on in this telling of the story. In this telling, Cratchit's walking home. He gets pelted by some snowballs, but just by some kids in the street. He ends up having a little fun with them, and he even decides to throw a hat at someone walking by just for their amusement. Poor choices, it turned out to be Scrooge, who fired him on the spot. So that's right, in this telling, we see Cratchit actually getting sacked Christmas Eve. And then he needs to sort of revamp his spirit. He goes for a walk getting the groceries and everything for the Christmas meal, goes home, talks to his family. It's very heartwarming to see the Cratchits doing a lot more. At the same time, it takes a lot away of the Scrooge lore, and you'll see what I mean when I get to the spirit. So now let's get back to Scrooge's side. He gets back to his place, and of course the Marley stuff happens. And here's the thing. I believe this is the movie where the stereotypical Jacob Marley look is created. It's sort of a thin, bony man kind of look, with an over-exaggerated big nose that other examples gave later. For example, if you remember on this channel I reviewed the Mr. Magoo Christmas special, that Marley is definitely a stereotype of this movie. And the sad thing is it good overall for Marley's character? It sure looks good, but I'll say it, I really hate giving criticism because I do like this version. The Marley is a bit bland in this movie. It doesn't help that we actually don't see him in life during the flashbacks as much as we do the Marley in the 51 classic, which really holds up. But not so much this one. It's a drony voice. He does not at all frighten Scrooge as much as you'd think Marley should. If anything, he bothers Scrooge enough. But I do like another bonus scene added. When Marley finally gets to Scrooge's room, we hear, I guess, some watchers walking by, informing everyone of the time. Scrooge opens the windows and tells them to come up to his room. There's someone in here. And they do in. Marley's vanished, though. They laugh at Scrooge off. And then Marley reappears and gets his point made to Scrooge. That was just a nice little touching scene that I didn't really thought I need, but I kind of like that there's just something different in this. In this, we actually see Scrooge trying to get help from somebody, which maybe does break the stereotype that Scrooge doesn't like to be around people much and would rather just handle things on his own. But hey, when you're in trouble and there's help walking by, you'd be a fool not to refuse it if needed. But besides that, we then get to the spirits, after Marley gives the warning about Scrooge leaving. First spirit, we definitely go to the stereotype of a young woman for the Ghost of Christmas Past, which is good. She does play the part well. She holds up the beauty, but is very stern with Scrooge. I do like her character there, giving criticism and, I guess, no, not so much ignorance. It's just more criticism to Scrooge when needed. But here's the thing that you might not like about this. Scrooge's past goes by extremely quickly in this movie. We cut back to his school, obviously, and him as a boy there. He's saying, he's listing off his friends' names as he sees them go by. Dick Wilkins does get mentioned, though. That's something interesting to me. I don't believe we heard it in the 51 edition, and yet it's mentioned here. And also the Magoo special. That's kind of interesting to me. It may have been mentioned in another Christmas classic I'm getting to, but we'll have to wait and see. But then we just go into the school, and we see Scrooge crying. He's all alone at Christmas again, but then his little sister comes in, get him free, which is different from the 51, because when his sister comes to get him to go back to their fathers, she's more of an adult woman in that scene. than a little girl coming in like this movie. Another sad thing, that's the only time we do see his sister in this movie, which again, you got to give the 51 movie credit for what they showed regarding his past relationship with his sister and his nephew. So, hurts a bit, but I guess they really, in 38, didn't want to go into that kind of detail about someone passing away at childbirth. I guess, again, there's a lot more guessing in this, but I'm loving going through this right now. And then the ghost shows him his business at Fezziwig's, being treated fairly, but still as a boy, basically, the same actor who did him when they were showing the school flashback. And then that's it. That was literally it. She was threatening to show him more, but then he lifts up part of her dressing and looks like he's about to strangle her, but then it cuts to him strangling a pillow, and that was it. So the Ghost of Christmas Past is very underwhelmingly used in this edition. If there's one thing I liked when I was younger, I was never a fan of showing so much of his love interests. I was more interested in what they show for the sister part. So even though we get only about 1% of his sister in this, there is no previous love interest mentioned, and I was happy to get through that. Some of you might not be if you've seen this edition, but that was a plus for me. Then we get to the Ghost of Christmas Past, as big and as jolly as he is, and he really sets the message across of what Scrooge needs to see Christmas Day. Helping people get the Christmas cheer. They do show a very sort of strange theory that if people are set to argue and lose their way, the Ghost of Christmas Present will just shake this sort of horn with some kind of magic and resolve all issues and differences. That was unnecessary. But then we do show Scrooge's nephew and fiancée-to-be, Bess, aka Elizabeth, in the church, along with Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim in the church. And now showing a lot more of the Cratchits getting ready for Christmas, and again, there's a lot of it. I will give one criticism. Tiny Tim in this movie is very cringy. And I'm sorry, it didn't used to be that way for me, but watching this growing up, there are certain scenes with him in that I just cannot look at seriously. I don't really need to go through them, but if you ever end up watching this version, 1938, watch the Cratchits eating Christmas dinner. You will know what I mean. So there's some criticism on, I guess, the acting aspect of it. But afterwards, Scrooge is definitely turned face way quicker than you might imagine. And again, I guess I have to give credit to how they booked Sims Scrooge. He didn't really turn face that quickly. He definitely felt regret, but even when the Ghost of Christmas Future showed up, he was still not ready to so much repent and accept that he fully needs to change. He had the, I believe, mindset that he was just too old, he was beyond all hope. But Reginald Owen Scrooge turns face much quicker than expected, and it really sort of just happens when he meets and helps the Ghost of Christmas Present sort out some differences on the street. Remember I was telling you about him helping people with this magic horn spirit, etc., etc.? Scrooge points out a situation where two people look like they're set to fight, helps the Ghost of Christmas Present rectify that. So he turns face way quicker than expected. That is definitely up for mixed opinions of what you want to see. For me, it's more heartwarming because I do like Owen's character turning face quicker and seeing the goodness in him. He does a really good job in this for me, despite not really being the traditional Scrooge character role. But the Ghost of Christmas Present does keep giving Scrooge his one-liners he says earlier, just like, if they die, they better do it, decrease the population, etc., etc., but he can't change Scrooge's mind, and Scrooge is definitely set to just go enjoy Christmas when he sees his nephew at his Christmas party enjoying himself and his fiancée-to-be. But then the Ghost of Christmas Future shows up. It was a good transition. I'll give a good transition shout out to him telling the Ghost of Christmas Present that I want to stay, I want to enjoy all the Christmas cheer. There's sort of a dream flashback of everything he's experienced this night, but then it cuts to him laughing in the forest. He doesn't know where he is. Then the Ghost of Christmas Future comes out. I'll say one thing about this movie. They do a better job of keeping the Ghost of Christmas Future's face completely hidden. There's only one scene in the graveyard where you can sort of make out his face. Whereas in the 1951 version, there are at least 2 or 3 times where you can just see through the cloak and look at his face, which shouldn't really be something you should see with the Ghost of Christmas Future. That is supposed to be your stereotypical death look. So I'll give this movie credit with the Future's look. And then we get what you'd expect for the Ghost of Christmas Future. There isn't really much cut out here that needed to stay in. Tiny Tim obviously passed away. A dead man that Scrooge is yet to identify turns out to be him. He fully repents, wakes up Christmas morning, and does all the good things you'd expect him to do. He offers charity to the people who he backsassed at the beginning of the movie, just like most of the other specials, the people collecting for the beggars. Sends out a Christmas turkey for Bob Cratchit, goes and sees his nephew, makes him partner in his firm. I like that. That was nice to see. And arranges the wedding between him and Bess, and then gets to the Cratchits, brings them tons of gifts. They all enjoy dinner together, and the movie just wraps up like that. So it definitely might mix your opinion if you've seen the 1951 version. Go into this with less expectation, but just appreciate the acting. There's a lot more of Bob Cratchit in this compared to the 1951 classic. And I give credit, I did like seeing Scrooge enjoy all of Christmas Day at his nephew's in the 51 version, but this holds up. Sorry if that's overwhelming for you guys, but I really didn't want to miss anything with this. This is one of my favorite tellings of A Christmas Carol. That isn't going to change anything. But what has changed is my love for the 51 version that has overtaken this in story and overall time. That's it. Took a long time to get this, but I'm glad I got it out. So, hope you all have a lovely day. We're getting closer to Christmas, only a week away. That's hard to believe. Keep it real.